Cheerful greetings, children. Today we'll start our English session, Class 6, Chapter 1, Taro's Reward. It is a Japanese folk tale which means story. Folk tale, an old traditional story that is passed on to people in a spoken way. For example, you might have heard a story from your mother. Your mother might have heard it from her grandparents likewise. So, when an information is transferred only in a spoken way and it doesn't have a written script, that is called as folk tale. Here, Taro is the main hero of the story and he is a woodcutter. Now let's move on to the story. This is a Japanese folk tale about a young lad, Taro, who is a poor woodcutter. He loves his old parents, but because of his poverty, is unable to fulfill their wishes. Taro works harder to fulfill his father's heart's desire and is granted a miraculous boon in return. As I told you, it is a Japanese folk tale and lad. Taro is a young lad, a young boy who was a woodcutter. Cutting the wood was his profession. He loves his parents very much. But maybe because of the poverty, he is not able to fulfill their wishes. But he works very hard each day by day in order to fulfill their wishes. One evening, when Taro and his parents were sitting in a corner of their hut, that was on a hillside, a strong wind whistled through the cracks of the hut, and everyone felt very cold. I wish I had a cup of sake. It would warm me and do my old heart good. This made Taro sadder than ever, for the heart-warming drink called sake was very expensive. Next morning, Taro jumped out of bed earlier than usual and made his way to the forest. He chopped and cut. His mouth was dry and his face was wet with sweat. My poor old father, if only he was as warm as I. Suddenly, Taro stopped chopping. He heard the sound of rushing water. He ran in the direction of the sounds. Could it possibly be rushing water? Taro saw a beautiful waterfall hidden behind a rock. Kneeling, he cupped a little in his hands and put it to his lips. I can't believe this waterfall has delicious sake instead of water. One evening, when Taro and his parents were sitting in a corner of their hut that was on a hillside, a strong wind whistled through the cracks of the hut and everyone felt very cold. I wish I had a cup of sake. It would warm me and do my old heart good. One particular evening, when Taro, along with his parents, were sitting inside the hut, they felt very cold because of the strong wind whistled through the cracks of the hut. Whistled, which means high-pitched sound because of the wind. Cracks, narrow opening. Cracks, what do you mean by cracks? Narrow opening. That means some part of the wall is broken, not completely broken. And sake. Sake is the Japanese alcoholic drink which is made of rice. Sake, which means, what do you mean by sake? And Japanese alcoholic drink that is made of rice, and also it is very expensive. So when his old father felt very cold, he wished that if he had a cup of sake to warm himself. That was his desire. This made Taro sadder than ever, for the heartwarming drink called sake was very expensive. Next morning, Taro jumped out of bed earlier than usual and made his way to the forest. He chopped and cut. His mouth was dry and his face was wet with sweat. My poor old father, if only he was as warm as I. Here we have two characters. One is he, the other one is I. He is his old father. I is Taro. This made Taro sadder. This is the incident which happened the previous night. That is, he was not able to fulfill the desire of his father. That made Taro more sad. But finally, what happens? Next morning, he wakes up early and he started his job also sometime earlier than the usual time. But because of the scorching sun, he felt very tired. He started to sweat himself. His mouth was completely dry. He started to sweat himself. His mouth was completely tired. That means it was a scorching sun. Suddenly, Taro stopped chopping. He heard the sound of rushing water. He ran in the direction of the sound. Could it possibly be rushing water? Suddenly, Taro could hear some different sound. He stopped chopping. Chopping means continuously hitting in order to cut down the wood. Continuously or repeatedly cutting the wood in order to break it into pieces. That time, to his surprise, he could hear some sound. He just wanted to know what was that sound. And he's guessing that it may be a rushing water, which means waterfall, or you can say that as a stream. So he's just moving towards the direction of the sound. He's rushing, moving very fast. Taro saw a beautiful waterfall hidden behind a rock. Kneeling, he cupped a little in his hands and put it to his lips. I can't believe this waterfall has delicious sake instead of water. So immediately he rushed towards the sound. To his surprise, he could see that there was a waterfall just hidden behind a rock. Where was the waterfall hidden? Just behind the rock. As soon as he saw the waterfall, he immediately knelt before the waterfall and cupped his hands. That means cupped, making the hands to the shape of a cup or to the bowl shape, and he tasted some water from it. And it was some unbelievable truth to him. It just gave him delicious taste of sake instead of water. Kneeling, just bending down on knees. All of you may be knowing the position of bending down on knees. We ourselves bend our knees. Our position, that's called as bending the knees. New words and their meanings. Lad, young boy. Lad, young boy. Sake, a Japanese drink made of rice. Sake, a Japanese drink made of rice. It is a noun, so we have to read it as sake. It is not sake, it is sake because it is taking the position of a noun. Miraculous, completely unexpected. Miraculous, completely unexpected. Boon, something that is useful to make life easier. Boon, something that is useful to make life